She was only supposed to refill his wine, but when she grabbed his tie and pulled him into a kiss, the Mafia boss realized she'd just saved his life. To everyone else, she was invisible, just another waitress moving through Seoul's most exclusive club. But Nancy saw what no one else did, the red dot tracking across his head, the driver's wrong-handed signal, the sniper waiting for the perfect shot. In that split second, she made a choice that shattered her carefully hidden past, while behind them, the man Tae-moo trusted most prepared to pull the trigger. Nancy's feet ached. 12 hours into her shift at the Raven Club, and the October rain hadn't stopped drumming against the floor-to-ceiling windows. She moved through Apgujeong's most exclusive dining room like a ghost, refilling wine glasses, clearing plates, existing in that peculiar space where service workers become invisible to power. Table 7. Always table 7 on Tuesday nights. Kwon Tae-moo sat with 3 associates, his presence commanding the shadowed alcove without effort. Expensive suit, controlled movements, the kind of dangerous calm that came from never needing to prove anything. Nancy had served him for 6 months, learning to read the subtle hierarchies in his world, who sat closest, who spoke first, who left alive. She approached with the Chateau Margaux, her trained smile in place. But something felt wrong. Park Jin-ho stood near the entrance, Tae-moo's driver for 7 years. Loyal. Constant. Tonight, he checked his watch with his left hand. Jin-ho was right-handed. Nancy's pulse quickened as old instincts stirred, pattern recognition from another life, one she'd buried under polyester uniforms and fake smiles. She poured the wine, watching Jin-ho in her peripheral vision. He repositioned twice in 30 seconds. Touched his ear. Not scratching. Adjusting something small. An earpiece. The muscle memory hit her like electricity. Sniper protocol. Spotter confirmation. Target acquisition. Nancy's gaze swept the room, searching for the angle, the sight line. Then she saw it, a pinpoint of red light dancing across the white tablecloth, crawling up Tae-moo's chest toward his head. Laser sight. 3 o'clock. The window he faced. Time fractured into heartbeats. Jin-ho's hand dropped to his side. Signal complete. Nancy's fingers closed around expensive silk. She grabbed Tae-moo's tie and yanked him down hard, her body moving before her mind could catch up. His eyes widened in shock as she pulled him toward her. "Don't move," she breathed against his lips, close enough to feel his confusion. Red dot. 3 o'clock. Your driver. Kiss me now or die. Her mouth met his just as the window exploded. Glass shattered inward like 1,000 falling stars, screams erupting as the bullet tore through where Tae-moo's head had been seconds before. Nancy kept him down, her hand on the back of his neck, her body shielding his as chaos consumed the Raven Club. Bodyguards swarmed. Guns appeared. Someone tackled Jin-ho to the floor as he reached for his phone. Nancy felt strong hands pulling her away from Tae-moo, but he stopped them with a single gesture. Her. With me. Now. Rain and broken glass crunched under her shoes as they rushed through the kitchen. The armored SUV waited in the alley, engine running. Nancy found herself pushed into leather seats that smelled of money and violence, the door slamming shut as they accelerated into Seoul's neon-blurred streets. Silence filled the space between them, broken only by their breathing and the rain hammering the roof. Tae-moo turned to study her, his dark eyes cataloging everything. Her controlled panic, her tactical awareness, the way she'd moved with muscle memory no waitress should possess. Blood from a glass cut traced down her temple, but her hands were steady. Who are you really? Nancy met his gaze, knowing her quiet life had just shattered as completely as that window. The red dot was gone, but she could still feel it burning against her skin. The safe house in Gangnam was all glass and steel, luxury wrapped around surveillance. Nancy counted 4 cameras in the entrance alone, motion sensors disguised as modern art, pressure plates beneath Persian rugs. A fortress pretending to be a penthouse. Tae-moo poured whiskey with steady hands while his men swept her for weapons and wires. She stood still, letting them work, her mind already cataloging exits and blind spots. Old habits. Just a waitress, he said finally, handing her the glass. Not a question. A challenge. Nancy wrapped her fingers around the crystal, feeling the weight of his skepticism. With good instincts. Nobody reads sniper protocol without training. He sat across from her, perfectly composed despite nearly dying an hour ago. The laser sight, the spotter signal, the angle of entry. You knew all of it in seconds. The whiskey burned. She'd prepared cover stories for years, layers of lies to protect the truth. But sitting here, watching this man who should be dead study her with those calculating eyes, the careful fiction felt suddenly pointless. Kabul. 3 years ago. The safe house that wasn't safe. The memory hit without warning, her sitting at a desk identical to this one, reviewing intelligence on a warlord's compound. Her analysis had been perfect. The timing had been wrong. 3 agents walked into an ambush because she'd missed one detail, one crucial pattern in the communication intercepts. She'd watched the drone footage. Watched them die. Former intelligence analyst, Nancy said quietly. I burned my career refusing a black ops mission. Been hiding ever since. Teimu's expression didn't change, but she felt the shift in the room. Truth had weight. Someone wants you dead, she continued. Professional setup, inside coordination. I can find them. Why would you? Because you'll let me walk away after. No strings. No debts. Just freedom. He studied her for a long moment, then turned to the wall of monitors. Security footage from the Raven Club played in loops, the dining room, the entrance, the kitchen. Jin-ho appearing and disappearing in frames, his movements ordinary, unremarkable. 3 of my lieutenants have died in the last 6 months, Teimu said, his voice carefully neutral. Car accident. Building fire. Allergic reaction to shellfish. All unfortunate. All convenient. Nancy moved to the screens, her analyst mind already working. Show me the dates. He pulled up files, and she saw it immediately, the pattern she'd spent years learning to recognize. Methodical elimination. Systematic removal of key personnel. Not random violence but strategic dismantling. It's not external, she said. This is someone inside, someone with access to schedules, security details, personal information. A traitor. A patient one. Nancy traced the timeline with her finger. 6 months of groundwork before tonight's attempt on you. They're mapping your entire organization. Teimu's jaw tightened, the first crack in his control. Find them. I walk away after. We're clear. Crystal. Nancy nodded, already running scenarios. Across the room, Teimu's phone lay on the glass table, its screen dark but its microphone very much alive. Neither of them noticed the tiny indicator light that pulsed once, confirming the connection. In a car 17 blocks away, Park Jin-ho listened to every word, his finger hovering over the record button. He smiled in the darkness, rain streaming down his windshield like tears. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. 3 days of files. Personnel records stretching back a decade, security protocols dense with coded procedures, communication logs that read like corporate minutes but hid something darker beneath. Nancy worked through them with the methodical precision of her old life, her analyst mind finding its rhythm again. Teimu watched her work, initially skeptical, then increasingly quiet. She'd catch him studying the way she cross-referenced data, how she built link analysis diagrams that exposed relationships invisible in isolation. On the second night, he brought her coffee without asking how she took it. Black, 2 sugars. He'd noticed. You see patterns most people miss, he said, settling into the chair across from her. The penthouse was silent except for rain against glass and the soft hum of servers processing surveillance feeds. You built an organization that runs like clockwork even when you're not watching. Nancy highlighted another connection, adding it to her growing map. Strategic delegation. Redundant systems. That's not instinct, that's training. Business school. Tokyo. A lifetime ago. His slight smile held something bitter. My father thought legitimacy could be learned. They worked in comfortable silence, the space between them shrinking as midnight became dawn. Nancy found herself aware of small things, the way he rolled his shoulders when stressed, the precise way he organized documents, the scent of his cologne mixing with coffee and the ozone smell of electronics. She discovered the encrypted communications on the 4th night, buried in routing logs most people wouldn't know to check. Military-grade encryption, messages that appeared as system diagnostics but carried data she couldn't crack. Someone's coordinating, she said, frustration creeping into her voice. But I can't break this. Teimu moved behind her chair, leaning close to study the screen. His presence was warm, solid. "The isolation is the hardest part," he said quietly. "Not the danger. The knowing that trust itself is a weapon people use against you." Nancy turned, finding his face inches from hers. She understood that loneliness, years of being no one, belonging nowhere, carrying secrets that separated her from any possibility of real connection. "I know," she whispered. His hand reached out, fingers straightening her collar with careful deliberation. The touch lingered, his thumb brushing the hollow of her throat. "You should wear silk, not polyester. It suits you better." The moment stretched, electric and dangerous. Then Nancy's gaze fell on the personnel file still open on her screen, and something clicked into focus. She pulled back, her mind racing. The 3 lieutenants. "Show me their security details again." Taemu retrieved the files, watching as she cross-referenced schedules, locations, timelines. They are buried in the mundane logistics of powerful men's lives. Transport arrangements. Driver rotations. The same name appearing in different contexts, always present, never suspicious. Park Jin-ho. "It's not who has access to you," Nancy said, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. "It's who has access to everyone." The driver who knew every schedule, every route, every vulnerability. The man who'd been present at each lieutenant's death, whose positioning tonight had given the sniper his angle. 7 years of patient infiltration, building trust while mapping targets. Taemu's expression went cold, absolute. But Nancy saw the pain beneath it, betrayal cutting deeper than any bullet could. Outside, Seoul's neon reflected off rain-slicked streets, and somewhere in the city, Jin-ho waited for his next move. Nancy became a shadow. For 3 days she tracked Jin-ho through Seoul's labyrinth streets, her CIA training resurfacing like muscle memory. She watched him execute his duties with perfect precision, arriving early, checking routes, maintaining the fleet of armored vehicles that kept Taemu's people alive. But twice each day, Jin-ho made stops that weren't on any schedule. The first was a parking garage in Itaewon. Nancy photographed him from across the street, zooming in as he pulled an encrypted phone from beneath his car's chassis. Military-grade equipment. The kind that left no digital footprint. The second stop was a cafe in Hongdae, trendy enough to provide cover, quiet enough for conversation. Nancy slipped in after him, ordered tea she didn't drink, and watched through her phone's camera as Jin-ho met with 2 people who didn't belong in student territory. The woman registered first, Min Jae, known in intelligence circles as the architect. Jade Serpent Syndicate's chief strategist, responsible for 3 territorial acquisitions in 2 years. Ruthless, patient, frighteningly intelligent. Nancy had read her file back in Langley, back when reading files was her entire world. The man beside Min Jae looked like Jin-ho. Same build, same features. Then Nancy understood, not looked like. Had looked like. Past tense. The family resemblance was unmistakable, and the memorial pin on Jin-ho's jacket suddenly made horrible sense. 5 years ago. Taemu's expansion into gangbuk territory. A rival gang's lieutenant killed in crossfire, collateral damage in a war over shipping routes and protection money. Nancy found the incident report later. Park Jin-soo, age 28, caught between organizations, wrong place, wrong moment, wrong casualty list. Jin-ho's brother. This wasn't business. This was revenge dressed in strategy, grief weaponized into patience. 7 years of service, loyalty performed while he mapped every weakness, every connection, every pressure point that could bring Taemu's empire crashing down. Nancy photographed everything, the meeting, the phone transfer, Min Jae's tactical tablet displaying what looked like organizational charts. Evidence that would mean nothing in court but everything in their current war. She arrived at the safe house after midnight. Taemu took one look at her face and poured 2 glasses of whiskey without speaking. Jin-ho's brother died in your gangbuk expansion, Nancy said, sliding the photos across the table. He's been planning this since before you hired him. The Jade Serpent Syndicate is backing him, Min Jae's running the operation. Taemu's hands were steady as he studied the evidence, but she saw the devastation in the set of his shoulders. 7 years. The man had driven his children to school, had stood beside him at funerals, had shared meals and silence and the weight of dangerous work. We arrest him, Taemu said finally. Tonight. No. Nancy's voice was firm. We don't know how deep the compromise goes. Who else he's turned, what fail-safes he's built. If we move now, we lose our chance to map the full network. You want me to let him continue? I want us to use his trust against him. Nancy met his eyes. He thinks he's hunting you. We make him believe he's winning while we dismantle everything he's built. Taimou was quiet for a long moment, grief and strategy warring across his features. Finally, he nodded. Then we become what he thinks we are, blind, vulnerable, and perfectly positioned to destroy him. The trap was set. Now they just had to survive it. Jin-ho moved first. The message came at 3 a.m., a photo of Sang-woo bound to a chair in some concrete basement, blood already darkening his shirt. The text was clinical: meeting. Dawn. Come alone or he dies slowly. It's a trap, Taimou said, already reaching for his gun. Of course it is. Nancy stared at the image, her mind working through angles. Which is why I'm going instead. You think he'll just let you walk in? I think he'll believe I've been playing you from the start. Nancy met his eyes. Former CIA analyst suddenly appears to save your life? Too convenient. I tell him I'm Jade Serpent, sent to get close, that I can deliver you to him. Taimou's expression went cold. He'll test you. I know. The warehouse in Incheon smelled of rust and fear. Jin-ho waited in the shadows, Min-jae beside him like a knife in expensive clothing. Sang-woo hung from chains, consciousness flickering. Nancy. Jin-ho's voice carried curiosity and suspicion. The waitress who sees too much. The analyst who's been waiting for this moment. She kept her voice steady. 6 months embedded, earning Taimou's trust. Min-jae can verify my credentials. Min-jae studied her with eyes like a dissecting table. Verification takes time. Proof is immediate. She gestured to Sang-woo. Show us where your loyalty lives. The knife was cold in Nancy's hand. She approached Sang-woo, seeing his confusion, his terror, the way he looked at her like she might save him. Just like the agents in Kabul had looked at her analysis, trusting her judgment right up until the bullets found them. I'm sorry, she whispered, too quiet for the others to hear. She made the cuts shallow, clinical, placing them where they'd hurt but miss major vessels. Each slice felt like carving pieces from her own soul. Sang-woo screamed, and Nancy forced herself to stay present, to not dissociate, to control the damage even as she inflicted it. Deeper, Min-jae commanded. Make him tell us about Taimou's safe houses. Nancy adjusted her angle, cutting across muscle she knew would bleed dramatically but heal. But Sang-woo's heart was already failing, stress and injury overwhelming a system compromised by loyalty and fear. She saw it in his eyes, the light dimming, the moment life decided to leave. No, she breathed, dropping the knife, reaching for pressure points, trying to stabilize what was already lost. Sang-woo died with her hands covered in his blood, his last breath carrying Taimou's name. Jin-ho smiled. Welcome to the Jade Serpent. The bathroom was grimy, the sink rust-stained. Nancy scrubbed her hands until the skin burned, watching pink water spiral down the drain. But the blood remained, not visible anymore, but she felt it soaking into her pores, into the spaces where she'd once believed she could be clean. Kabul. 3 agents. Now Sang-woo. For deaths from her choices, her hands. She'd told herself this was different. Strategic sacrifice. Necessary evil. But staring at her reflection, Nancy couldn't find the line anymore between the operative doing what was required and the monster who'd learned to justify anything. The door opened. Jin-ho handed her a towel, his expression almost gentle. It gets easier, he said. That was what terrified her most, that he might be right. 3 days before the explosion. You have to believe it, Nancy said, studying the schematic of the car bomb. Jin-ho will be watching your reaction. If there's any doubt, any hesitation, he'll know. Taimou's hands were steady as he poured their coffee, but she'd learned to read the tension in his shoulders. You're asking me to watch you die. I'm asking you to trust that I won't. They'd been planning for 72 hours, the route, the timing, the precise amount of C4 needed to destroy a vehicle without killing its occupant who'd already escaped through the trunk. Technical details that kept them from discussing what this really meant. After this, you're alone, Taimou said quietly. Deep cover, no contact, surrounded by people who want me dead.
If something goes wrong. It won't. Nancy.
He crossed to where she stood by the window, Soul's lights glittering below like a circuit board.
I need you to know.
She turned, finding him closer than expected. The air between them felt charged, heavy with everything they'd been carefully not saying for weeks. Working together, fighting together, existing in each other's orbit while pretending proximity meant nothing.
I know, she whispered.
His hand cupped her face, thumb tracing her cheekbone with devastating gentleness.
This isn't like the first time. Not survival. Not tactics. No, she agreed. It's not.
When he kissed her, it held all the words they didn't have time for: apology and promise, fear and faith, the acknowledgement that they were choosing each other even as they planned to be torn apart. Nancy kissed him back like memorizing a language she'd need to survive exile.
Present day.
The explosion lit up the Gangnam Expressway at rush hour, spectacular and final. Nancy's Mercedes became a fireball, traffic cameras capturing every angle as emergency vehicles swarmed. News helicopters circled like vultures. In his office, Taemu watched the footage, and his grief needed no performance. The possibility of loss was enough to make his hands shake, his voice fracture when he spoke to his lieutenants.
Let them see him breaking. Let Jin-ho see it too.
Nancy watched the same coverage from a safe house in Mapo, cut off from everyone, from everything. She saw Taemu's face on screen and had to remind herself it was strategy, that he knew she was alive. The isolation pressed against her like physical weight. 3 days later, she approached Jin-ho at a coffee shop in Gangnam, bruised and furious.
He used me, she said, voice raw.
Set me up as his spy inside your operation, then tried to kill me when I got Sang-woo's blood on my hands.
Said I was compromised. Jin-ho studied her, suspicious and calculating. You survived a car bomb. I went out through the trunk 2 blocks before the trigger point. Watched my own car explode on the news. Nancy let real exhaustion bleed into her voice. I want him to hurt the way I'm hurting. I want him to lose everything.
Something shifted in Jin-ho's expression, recognition of shared grief, of revenge as the only language that mattered.
Come with me.
The Jade Serpent safe house in Incheon became her prison and her stage. 2 weeks of playing the scorned operative, feeding false intelligence to Jin-ho while leaving coded messages in dead drops for Taemu. Coffee shop receipts with numbers that mapped patrol routes. Library books with underlined passages revealing meeting times. She was exhausted, isolated, drowning in her role. Then Jin-ho called her to Min-jae's office, his smile sharp as broken glass.
Tomorrow, he said, we end Kwon Taemu forever.
The penthouse overlooked the Han River, glass and steel suspended above Seoul like a predator surveying prey. Nancy stood beside floor-to-ceiling windows while Min-jae's lieutenants assembled around the conference table, each representing a piece of the machine about to consume Taemu's empire. Min-jae activated the display, organizational charts, asset maps, personnel files. Everything Jin-ho had spent 7 years collecting, now weaponized into a surgical strike. We don't just kill Kwon Taemu, Min-jae said, her voice clinical.
We absorb his network. His lieutenants become our lieutenants. His territories become our territories. His people wake up working for us and never realize they changed masters. Nancy watched the presentation, her stomach turning. This wasn't revenge, it was conquest dressed in personal vendetta. Hundreds of people would be swallowed by the Jade Serpent, their loyalties reprogrammed, their lives commodified. Jin-ho leaned forward, intensity radiating from him. But first, he watches it crumble. Every lieutenant turned or eliminated. Every safe house compromised. Every person he trusts revealed as ours. Then when he has nothing left, when he understands how completely I've destroyed him, then he dies. The obsession in his voice was clear, grief metastasized into something consuming. Nancy understood it, had felt that same need for someone to pay, someone to hurt the way she'd been hurt. But understanding didn't make it less monstrous. Nancy.
Min-jae's gaze fixed on her.
You're quiet. A crack in the facade.
Nancy felt it immediately, the momentary hesitation, the flicker of horror she hadn't quite suppressed. Min-jae saw it too, her eyes narrowing. I'm thinking about how he'll look, Nancy said, forcing steel into her voice. When he realizes the woman he kissed, the woman he trusted, was the one who handed him to his enemies. I want to see his face when that truth hits. She channeled every ounce of bitterness from Kabul, from Sang-woo, from every moment she'd been used and discarded by people who saw her as a tool. Let Min-jae see that rage. Let her believe it was directed at Tae-moo. Min-jae studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Jin-ho stood, gesturing to a side room. One more thing. A final test. The man bound to the chair was young, terrified, blood already crusting beneath his nose.
Tenemos informant, Jin-ho explained.
He's been feeding information to the police. Kill him, and you're fully one of us. Nancy's hand closed around the gun Jin-ho offered. The weight was familiar, deadly. She approached the informant, seeing his tears, his desperate humanity. Could she do it? Could she cross that final line to maintain cover? Her finger found the trigger. The informant's head lolled forward, and Nancy saw the truth. He was already dead, probably had been for hours. Body temperature, lividity, the way his chest didn't move. This wasn't execution. It was theater. Nancy fired twice into the corpse, the performance Min-jae required. Jin-ho smiled, satisfied. Tomorrow at the warehouse. Tae-moo walks into our trap, and you'll be there to watch him fall. Nancy met his eyes, her own mask perfect. I wouldn't miss it. But inside, her mind was already calculating the warehouse layout, possible extraction points, how to turn Jin-ho's trap into his own execution. Tomorrow, one way or another, this ended. Dawn broke cold over Incheon's waterfront, fog rolling off the Han River to wrap the abandoned warehouses in gray shrouds. Nancy stood on the second-floor catwalk, her dead-drop message already delivered, warehouse location, Jin-ho's positions, the full scope of his ambush coded into a coffee shop receipt left beneath a park bench at 4 a.m. Below, Jin-ho positioned his snipers with the precision of someone who'd studied warfare. 3 elevated positions, overlapping fields of fire, escape routes sealed. Min-jae's Jade Serpent operatives blended into shadows, weapons ready. He'll come, Jin-ho said, checking his watch. His pride won't let him ignore a direct challenge. What Jin-ho didn't know, Tae-moo's counter-ambush already surrounded the warehouse. Police task force holding position 2 blocks out. Every angle covered, every exit mapped. The trap had a trap. Nancy's earpiece crackled, Tae-moo's signal. He was moving. The black Mercedes rolled into the warehouse district exactly on schedule, alone and exposed. Jin-ho smiled, years of patient revenge about to pay dividends. Tae-moo stepped out, hands visible, walking into what looked like certain death. Kwon Tae-moo, Jin-ho called from the shadows. 7 years I've stood beside you. 7 years watching you live while my brother molded in the ground. Did you even remember his name? Tae-moo stopped, his face carefully neutral. Park Jin-soo. Gangbuk Territory War. I remember every name. Not enough to stop. Not enough to care. Jin-ho emerged, gun raised. You built your empire on bodies like his, and now I've mapped every piece of it. Your people are mine. Your territories are mine. You have nothing left. Nancy moved to the railing, her voice cutting through the tension. Park Jin-ho. She saw him turn, confusion flickering. I know about your brother. I know what grief does to people, how it transforms into something that consumes everything. I'm sorry for your loss. I'm sorry it came to this. She pulled her gun, aiming it at Jin-ho instead of Tae-moo. But this ends now. Jin-ho's face twisted with betrayal. You. The signal flare lit the dawn. Tae-moo's forces poured in from every direction, tactical precision overwhelming Jade Serpent positions. Police sirens wailed closer. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes strobing through fog. Nancy descended the stairs, moving toward Tae-moo. They fought back to back, the choreography of people who'd learned each other's rhythms. She covered his left, he covered her right, their movements synchronized by trust forged in crisis. Min-jae went down first, taken by Tae-moo's lieutenant. Snipers surrendered as they were surrounded. The Jade Serpent's careful plan collapsed into chaos and capture. Then Nancy felt the gun barrel press against her temple. Jin-ho's arm locked around her throat, using her as a shield. Blood streamed from a shoulder wound, but his grip was iron. Drop your weapons. All of you. The warehouse fell silent except for harsh breathing and distant sirens. Taemu stood 15 feet away, gun raised but useless. His forces held position, unable to shoot without hitting Nancy. Victory was within reach, Jin-ho wounded, his network crumbling, police seconds away. But Nancy was dying in front of him. "Choose," Jin-ho said, his voice breaking. "Your empire or her life. My brother didn't get a choice. Neither do you." Taemu's eyes met Nancy's, and she saw him making the calculation she'd never wanted him to face. The warehouse held its breath. Jin-ho's gun pressed harder against Nancy's temple, his arm crushing her windpipe. Taemu stood frozen, every tactical option ending with her blood on concrete. "Choose," Jin-ho repeated, desperation cracking his voice. "Everything you've built or the woman who destroyed it." Taemu's gun clattered to the floor. "Let her go," he said quietly. "You win. Take it all, the territory, the network, my life. Just let her live." Nancy's heart broke watching him surrender, watching the empire he'd spent decades building become worthless in seconds because she mattered more. Jin-ho's grip loosened slightly, victory flooding his features. Then Min-jae's voice cut through the moment, cold and amused. "How touching. How useless." She stepped from the shadows, gun raised and aimed at both of them. "Did you actually think this was about your brother, Jin-ho? About revenge?" Her laugh was surgical. "You were a tool. Grief-stricken, obsessed, perfectly manipulatable. The Jade Serpent needed Kwan's territory. Your vendetta was just convenient packaging." Jin-ho's face drained of color. "My brother died in a gang war. Tragic. Irrelevant." Min-jae's gun never wavered. "Now you've served your purpose. Both of you die, the territories fall into chaos, and we absorb everything in the vacuum. Clean. Efficient." Her finger tightened on the trigger. Nancy felt Jin-ho's shock ripple through his body, his grip faltering for a fraction of a second. She drove her elbow into his wounded shoulder, twisting free as he gasped. Min-jae's shot went wide, sparking off metal. Nancy closed the distance, years of combat training flooding back. Min-jae was skilled, precise, but Nancy fought with the fury of someone who'd watched too many people die for other people's strategies. They crashed through crates, trading blows that echoed through the warehouse. Behind them, Taemu retrieved his weapon. Jin-ho stood alone, bleeding and broken, his entire world revealed as manipulation. He raised his gun, not at Taemu, but at Min-jae. 7 years, he whispered. 7 years of my life. The shots rang out simultaneously. Jin-ho and Min-jae fell together, their blood mingling on concrete. Jin-ho's eyes found Taemu one last time, filled with something between hatred and regret, then emptied completely. Not heroic. Not redemptive. Just waste. Police flooded the warehouse, tactical teams securing Jade Serpent operatives. Nancy and Taemu moved through the chaos like ghosts, slipping toward a side exit while shouted commands and handcuffs echoed behind them. Outside, Seoul's dawn was breaking properly now, fog burning away under hard sunlight. "My empire's finished," Taemu said, watching police lights paint the warehouse district blue and red. "Every connection I had will be investigated. Every loyalty questioned. It's over." "I'm sorry." "I'm not." He took her hand, bloody and bruised and absolutely certain. "An empire built on bodies isn't worth your life. It never was." They walked to Seoul Station as the city woke around them, 2 people disappearing into crowds of commuters. The southbound train waited, destination uncertain, future unwritten. "Where do we go?" Nancy asked as they boarded. Taemu smiled, tired but genuine. "Anywhere that isn't here. Anywhere we can be no one." The train pulled away from Seoul, carrying them toward whatever came next, ordinary, anonymous, and finally free. The cafe opened at 6, catching Busan's fishing crews before they headed out and the early risers who liked their coffee with sunrise. Nancy wiped down tables while the espresso machine hissed, the routine as familiar now as loading a weapon once was. 2 years, and she still marveled at the simplicity. No aliases, no cover stories, just coffee and conversation in a small coastal town where nobody cared who they'd been before. Taemu worked the counter, chatting with Mr. Kim about his grandson's baseball game, his smile genuine and unguarded. He looked different in casual clothes, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly mussed. Happy looked good on him. Nancy's eyes tracked the entrance anyway, old habits coded into muscle memory. Every new customer assessed, exit routes catalogued, threat levels calculated automatically even as she asked if they wanted cream. Some patterns never fully died. She'd made peace with that. "You're doing it again," Taemu said, bringing her coffee the way she liked it. Black, 2 sugars. He'd remembered from that first night at the safe house, remembered everything. He still wore silk ties, even here. Today's was charcoal gray, the same shade as the one she'd grabbed at the Raven Club. Not the original, that one had been destroyed as evidence, but a deliberate choice, a symbol transformed from weapon to promise. His fingers straightened her collar, the gesture achingly familiar. His touch lingered, warm and certain. "The coast is clear," Nancy said softly. Their private code evolved from tactical assessment to love language. "I love you. We're safe. We made it." "Clear skies," he responded, his own version of the same truth. Sang-woo barked from the back patio, their rescue dog chasing seagulls with boundless energy. They'd named him to honor the lieutenant who'd died, transforming that guilt into something living and loved. The dog didn't replace what was lost, but he made the remembering gentler. The TV in the corner caught Nancy's attention, a news report about organized crime prosecutions. Footage of the Incheon warehouse, now 2 years old but still referenced. "Jade Serpent Syndicate completely dismantled," the anchor said. Once one of Seoul's most powerful criminal organizations, now a historical footnote following the failed conspiracy. Jin Ho's face flashed briefly on screen. Nancy felt the familiar tug of complicated grief, for his brother, for his wasted years, for the revenge that consumed him. But it felt distant now, like reading about someone else's tragedy. The cafe closed at sunset. Nancy and Taemu stood on their small balcony overlooking the ocean, his arm around her shoulders, watching the sky turn amber and rose. Fishing boats dotted the horizon, their lights beginning to glow as darkness approached. "I spent years running from myself," Nancy thought, leaning into his warmth. "Running from Kabul, from the CIA, from every mistake and failure that defined me. Turns out I just needed someone worth standing still for." "What are you thinking?" Taemu asked. "That we made it. Against everything, Jin Ho Min Jae, our own pasts, we actually made it." He kissed her temple, unhurried and content. "We did." The last light caught the ocean, turning the water into liquid gold. No red dots. No laser sights. No danger hiding in shadows. The red that is gone, Nancy realized. Only light remains.